Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 12. Don't argue with me. Saying this was pointless. His sweet mate did nothing but argue every time he dragged the young man to Master Lucé. At least Gerard now had the energy for it. Yu was still being kept unconscious, but she'd wake up. The longer he realized this, the more he worried exactly how she'd be upon awakening, but one step at a time. Zhao offered some heated protest, but followed anyway. That was good enough. The thinker didn't have to like it, or come quietly, just so long as he followed. Though the bickering was getting old. Rolling his eyes, the healer picked up his pace. Stop! Hearing that startled the student healer. Instead of argumentative, his island brother called out in warning. He turned back to Zhao, then forward to where his sweetmate was looking. There weren't many sights that stopped Gerard's heart, but the skeleton was at the top of the list. Blue crystals, doubled in size, stood frozen at the top of the hill. Lord Ferdinan might fear healers, but the Couch had every right to fear the Tinkerer. He knew firsthand what that boy was capable of. Neither did he want to experience that again. All three of them stood, gridlocked, terrified to move. Zhao was the first to step forward. The skeleton scurried away a few steps, then forced himself back. Why isn't he fleeing? Once his sweetmate was standing beside him, the Couch leaned in. We should take the boats. Yeah, but... Zhao considered for a moment. If he didn't desperately want something, he wouldn't still be standing there. That thought made Gerard cringe, considering Ferdinan could easily find Zhao any time. But this was the boy he'd seen tear apart healers and psychs who'd gotten too close. The boy who nearly cost him an eye. Samuel was wrong. This boy was dangerous. Well, dangerous to healers and psychs, and himself. A strange sound floated down the hill, but neither he nor Zhao could make any sense of it. I can't hear you, Gerard shouted, making himself as small as possible, trying not to spook the child. I'm coming closer. Don't. Zhao's blue-black eyes doubled in size. I can't handle a repeat of last time. Neither can I. But he wants something. If it was from you, he wouldn't still be here. Slowly, gingerly, the Couch made his way forward. Come on, say something. Show me I'm close enough. His heart raced, but he was bigger and stronger now, and the boy was deathly thin. Even as strong as Lord Ferdinan was, he should be able to defend himself. But Samuel wasn't able to stop him. It took sedating the boy for Gerard to escape. Stop! The universe and all within obeyed. All save Zhao, who shifted a confused face between his sweetmate and his charge. Was that Yizhe? Blue crystals flew around wildly. Ferdinan paled at Zhao's question, but Gerard nodded. How does he know Yizhe? Only the royal family knows it. At this moment, it didn't matter, though. Keeping his voice deep and calm, the healer called out, I won't come any closer. A dry tongue licked at even drier lips to no avail. What am I doing? I should run away if he can't. I'm listening. What are you trying to say? The skeleton paled and blushed simultaneously, entire body trembling uncontrollably. What? Somehow Ferdinan shook harder, though Gerard could hardly say much. He wasn't visibly shaking, but his insides. Silence hung between the three of them, all afraid to move. Stay calm. If I don't scare him, everything will be okay. Yu? It took a moment for the Tinkerer to nod, and when he started, it seemed his body wouldn't let him stop. Even if the boy was dangerous to him, Gerard knew the extents Lord Ferdinan would go to for his apprentices. The damage was extensive, but she'll make a full recovery, thanks to your inventions. It's made this faster and easier, but there's only so much we can do at a time. So, it'll be a while longer. Ferdinand's teeth clattered. Silence held everyone in place. It took Zhao stepping between them to break the spell. We're taking the boats. Ferdinan crouched low, eyes darting between Gerard and Zhao. Neither did the boy move when they slowly backed away. Once again, he turned down the dried fruit the elf was munching. Is my life so entertaining? Dream or not, it felt like his privacy was being stolen. The first block of his third year ended, and he was at home. They watched his 8-year-old self attempt a new move on the impossible-to-beat Captain Rhetoric. A smile tugged at Zephyr's lips. That man never let me win. On the ground, air knocked from his lungs, young Zephyr smiled. After a few more tries, Tenalia stepped up. She let him complete the full move. Her pleased look said it was perfect. Interesting, the elf winked. You have your aunt's stance. I would have thought you'd stand more like your Captain Rhetoric. Aunt Tenalia oversaw my training from the start. Zephyr watched his mom enter. 5-year-old Ferdinan followed behind, head down. Has he always walked like that? Seems like it. Tenalia, a messenger from the capital arrived. He's here on the master's business. Thank you, Amria. Giving her a wink, Tenalia apologized. I'm sorry, but you don't keep the master waiting, him or his servants. Yes, ma'am. You did well. We'll practice again tomorrow. That's a move everyone should know. The little prince's pride from that praise was tangible. The tiny queen squeezed her son. I need Captain Rhetoric for a task. Would you play with your cousin, my darling? Of course! Memory Zephyr ran over to little Ferdinan and grabbed his hand, making him flinch. They matched heights, but Zephyr now outdid his cousin for muscle. I thought he was always sickly. When did that happen? 8-year-old Zephyr turned to his cousin, hands flying. Antonalia says everyone should know Hotaru. I'll teach you. An amused snort left the elf. How did the little prince become an adult? What? Zephyr didn't get an answer, so he returned his attention to the scene. Little Ferdinan nodded, shaking as normal. Time and again Zephyr showed his cousin the move, but Ferdinan was reluctant. The elf leaned down to the older Zephyr, while sapphire eyes stayed glued on the younger. Your cousin hasn't spoken once in the 3 years we've watched. It took a moment for Zephyr to understand the elf's confusion. It's strange he talks now. We thought he'd be mute like his father. What? The elf turned her full attention to him. The prince scratched the back of his head before his hands moved again. Hearing Ferdinand's voice for the first time startled him. I don't know how, but he suddenly started speaking a couple years ago. Really? The elf looked thoughtful before continuing. Then why not teach them a hand language like rhetoric? It worked for him. Rhetoric isn't mute. The two stared at each other, while the little prince scolded young Ferdinan to try seriously. He hasn't spoken yet either. He talks all the time. Zephyr laughed. I'm an idiot. Hand language is just as much talking as any tongue language, more so. Rhetoric speaks eloquently in multiple hand languages. The Duke and Ferdinan till recently didn't speak at all. We tried. Hand, tongue, clicks, nothing. It was frustrating for everyone. Movement caught their eye as young Zephyr attacked for real. Ferdinand hit the ground hard, but the little prince offered suggestions and pulled his cousin up. How could a mute child figure out speech? Zephyr shrugged. He'd wondered that question many times. I'm a fighter. A scientist can't hurt me, so do it right. I command it, young Zephyr demanded. This made Ferdinand tremble, but he nodded. The next time Zephyr came at him shocked all present, even little Ferdinand. In the blink of an eye, the tinker squatted low, swept towards Zephyr, grabbed the attacking arm, pulling the prince off balance, while his free hand rammed Zephyr's abdomen. As Ferdinand stood to his full height, he shifted, lifting his cousin off the ground and, like a pillow, threw Zephyr to the floor. Utter surprise filled the princess's face, both of them. I don't remember this at all. In the same moment, Ferdinand was at Zephyr's side, crying. Laughter refused to come. By the time the little prince got enough air to say something, a shadow fell over them, and another sound echoed through the room. Looking up, young Zephyr's grin vanished. The Duchess stood, bent over them, pure fury on her face. To the side, Ferdinand prostrated himself, holding his cheek. You do not attack our prince. I don't remember her ever sounding like that, older Zephyr whispered, heart racing. In the same breath, the Duchess's voice softened, and she helped young Zephyr sit up. Have you been hurt, my prince? No. Captain Rhetoric plays rougher. Nervousness painted those words. 2 sets of onyx eyes looked from the Duchess to her son. You shouldn't let him do these things. He can't enjoy hurting those he's to protect. I would have laughed it off, present-day Zephyr told the elf. What happened instead? 2 golden fingers came together before one dropped to the side. I played alone that day. The Duchess grabbed her son's hair and lifted. Move. He came to my room that evening and prostrated himself. Remembering that night, watching it again, wasn't pleasant. Young Ferdinand arrived at Zephyr's room, white as a ghost and sobbing. When the little prince insisted everything was fine, he broke down completely, screaming wordlessly. Such an extreme reaction, the elf commented while the portion of memory played out. I wish I didn't remember this. Did anything else happen? A couple days later, a golden finger bounced twice before pointing to the side. The elf smirked. Yes? He tapped his forehead and shook his head. I don't remember. As if to prove himself wrong, the scenery changed to the magnificent palace gardens. The little prince roamed aimlessly through flowers and the hedges of living maize, until he stumbled upon young Ferdinand. Torn plants laid at the little boy's feet. Zephyr ran up and knelt beside him. What are you playing? Dejected eyes cast themselves downward, but little hands quickly swept the bits into a small bag. Are you making tea? Can you make me some? Ferdinand managed a shaky nod. Rose tea is yummy. A small nod, and Ferdinand headed to the rose garden, where Zephyr picked a flower. We were playing, so why does he look like he belongs at a funeral? The little prince was bothered too, but no amount of obnoxiousness lightened Ferdinand's mood. You're sad, the elf whispered. I was worried. He's never been lively or happy, but he truly looked miserable. Soon the boys were in the kitchen, where Ferdinand made 2 different teas. The prince rambled for both of them before asking Ferdinand for a taste of his. This left the little tinkerer shaking. Are you not feeling well? Young Zephyr offered. Ferdinan bowed, desperately trying to hide behind recently trimmed hair. When kept short, all the curl was gone. Worry filled the little prince. You should rest. I played alone that day, too. The memory skipped ahead a few hours to the little prince checking on his cousin. Ferdinand laid swallowed up in a small bed, pale and sweating profusely. On the nightstand was the tea from earlier. Grabbing it, Zephyr offered the drink to his suffering cousin. Next to the glass was the pile of plants Ferdinand used. Little Onyx's eyes locked onto them. They doubled in size, and his face twisted. Then everything went black. He was so sick he didn't leave bed till we left for school. Zephyr's hands danced, searching for the rest. An older healer was asked to tend to him on the ride, but Ferdinand screamed when she got close. I don't think I'd been so scared in my life. Silence drew the prince's attention to her. What happened? What took you from worrying about him to hating him? Heaviness filled the prince. Thinking about his cousin weighed him down, sorrow and anger. Why did seeing those plants make me angry? I don't want to see any more tonight. Part of you knows what really happened. Excuse me? To think, he went to such trouble producing thorns when he never should have needed them. Her ever-present smirk deepened. And you too. You never should have needed them either. Hello? Mulam? Interrupted Zephyr's response. Both of them jumped. Why am I hearing a girl's voice? You're not the only one I tend to. Sapphire eyes sharpened, searching the dreamscape. Sleep, little prince. He was about to ask what she meant, when she disappeared. If Ferdinan wasn't exhausted before running into the couch, he definitely was after. The journey to the administration building felt like it only got longer with each step, until he was facing the glass door of the superintendent's waiting area. Adrenaline surged through him. Anxiety replaced fatigue. I won't fail this time, I can't. Ferdinand's bony hand froze to the door's handle. Of course he would. He was an incompetent coward. Facing Killer Bear when he couldn't control himself with Calge Herard? Granted, the Calge could do significantly more damage than the head healer to not just Ferdinand's country, but John's as well. The superintendent's office was ahead, and the skeleton was frozen again, searching for any distraction. Yu. She wakes up tomorrow, but how long until she leaves isolation? And he'd never visit. A message. I'll let her know I'll help her with her coursework. He should tell her in person, but isolation. Ferdinand shook, his stomach knotted. Fingers dug into his undamaged arm, one trembling breath, then another. If I don't meet them both in the superintendent's office. Breakfast left up his throat. He couldn't swallow. He tried, but ended up grabbing a trash bin. He hadn't caught his breath before the reception area's doors opened, and a woman's voice called out, I'll take care of that, Lord Ferdinan. They're waiting for you. Bright red, Ferdinand gave a shaky nod. I inconvenience everyone. I make everyone work harder. Adrenaline smothered the fatigue plaguing him. You're already failing. Gingerly, he inched over and peeked inside. A perfectly average man stood next to Master Dea. His heart felt like it would explode. Quick breaths careened out of control. It didn't feel right. His heart always raced around healers, but not like this. It felt as if it'd break with the next beat, like it was worn beyond repair. His heart, it moved faster, more recklessly than before, jumping and twisting. The skeleton wanted to grab his chest to force it to slow down, but not with a healer nearby. I can't fail again. Not after that hour-long lecture, facing the Duchess without good news. Calm down, you're making things worse. Consciously, he forced himself to take longer, more controlled breath. With each erratic beat of his heart, he told himself to calm down. It wasn't helping, but it was all he had to counter the voice mocking his weakness. Lord Ferdinan, please take a seat, Dea offered. Healer Bear shifted uncomfortably. Ferdinand shook his head. It doesn't have to be here. Dea gestured to the little lounging area between Ferdinand and the man's desk. But it was too close. Please, I'm fine. Very well. Superintendent Dea sighed as if a million hopes just flew out the window. Please, your report. Ferdinand's teeth clattered. He squeezed the screen tight and refused to look at Bear. I've gone over Prince Zephyr's schedule and... You've drawn up suggestions, Dea prompted. Could you send me that information? Yes, sir. Calm down. His worn heart only moved faster. Fumbling, trembling, Ferdinand sent the file to the man sitting a few feet away. But based on what my prince has done, if he follows that schedule... Spots floated around and his vision blurred. Ferdinand wanted to shrink down and scream, but he couldn't. Losing control, not allowed. Yet, the fear strangled him, overwhelmed him. He'll need to take courses over the breaks, but he trains at home during that time, Dea pointed out. He's... Swallowing hard didn't steady his voice. More capable... more than capable. You just have to prove. To prove. Healer Bear looked over the schedule closely. This is pretty heavy considering. Do you think he can handle it? The sound of the healer's voice stopped Ferdinand's heart. Squeezing the screen harder, Ferdinand shut his eyes tight. Based on his previous study habits, yes, but scared of a man you could easily kill. But worry pursed Daya's lips at the obvious increase in his student's terror. The superintendent motioned for his brother to move back. Nodding, Bear retreated until he was pressed against the window behind Daya's. My schedule's light. I was going to shadow. It'd be better for everyone if I died now. If only you deserved such mercy. No more words came, no matter how hard he tried. His teeth clattered and his stomach lurched. He needed this to end. Daya leaned forward. You're attending classes with him for a few days to make sure he can handle it. Ferdinand clutched the screen tighter and nodded. The room swayed. What little breakfast was left in him wasn't sitting well. Please let me go. Watching the tattooed jaw work back and forth was intimidating. Bear and I will go over this and let you know if any changes are needed. As it is, Prince Zephyr is expected to resume classes the beginning of the week. Thank you for your cooperation, Lord Ferdinan. My duty. That voice laughed gleefully. Dismissed. Not 2 steps out of the man's office, Ferdinand found himself on his knees. Miss Raidery was next to him, but ringing drowned out her words. Folding himself in half, one arm around his stomach, one hand sealing his mouth, he tried with everything not to be sick.